Alright. I don't know if we're live or not, but we can definitely try this again. So, I'm going to test it out. There we are. Okay. Hey everyone. Welcome in. Going to do a live stream where we will be looking at the different components of wins above replacement and visualizing it in a Shiny app. And what's really cool about that is we can compare, just how good certain players are in certain facets of the game. And I'll use this platform to say, this is comparing Fangraphs War. And recently there's news that's been out that Fangraphs has switched to a metered paywall, so you only get a certain amount of free articles a month before you have to pay. But I would highly recommend paying if you are able. So, sign up for a monthly subscription or a yearly subscription. They put out great content on a daily basis, and they highly, highly, highly deserve it. Their previous business model making money turns out that it's not so great, and now they need alternative ways to make money. So please, highly recommend getting a membership from Fangraphs and supporting them. So we'll get started here. I have these untitled documents. We'll start with the Shiny app right away. So on here, we'll just go File, New File, Shiny Web App. And then this is kind of my documents folder. Call it whatever you want. We'll just say War Comparison. We'll create it. And you should get this data set or this kind of code that just basically shows off and showcases this kind of just a basic Shiny app. But what we're going to do is we're going to add different layers and elements to it. So we can get rid of all these comments and try to make it as simple as possible. So that way it's not too crowded or anything like that. So we'll just get rid of these comments. Actually, we can just get rid of this. And I'll go a little bit into like how a Shiny app behaves. So, simply put, a Shiny app. Now you could have. There's two different ways of building a Shiny app. You saw in that when I was creating the name. Typically, I like doing this. So it's got an app.r file, and within it, there's a UI and a server side, and each of those basically make up the Shiny app. The UI side is the user interface side, so you build out what you want to see on that Shiny app. And then on the server side, it basically takes whatever data you want to put in there and builds out a way to filter and sort and create graphs and visualizations from whatever's on the UI side. So like if you want to add on the UI side, if you want to add like a select input where you say, hey, I want to select these players, then you can do that. And so on and so forth. So what we're going to do here is we're going to say Shiny. Obviously, since we're building a Shiny app, we need Shiny as a library. We will also need Baseball R. We will also need Patchwork. Maybe not Patchwork, but definitely Tidyverse. Let's use MLB Plot R. That's useful. Shout out Camden K for developing that. For getting like player headshots. Magic, which allows us to render those player headshots on the graph, and then CowPlot, which is to draw out the graph with the player headshot, so on and so forth. So those are the main packages we'll be using. And then what's cool about Shiny is you can put in data that is essentially on the outside looking in to use for that Shiny app. And what I mean by that is you can put it outside the UI and server, and it allows us to know like where the data is coming from. So we'll start here and we'll say HS, which is just short for headshots. Again, call it whatever you want, but HS MLB plotter, and we'll load headshots. What that does is it loads all these player headshots. It's got the player name, their Savant ID, ESPN ID, and a headshot from ESPN. And it's got all these different IDs that will join with our data set. So I'm only concerned about 2 columns. So I'll say dplyr select, we'll say Savant ID, and then ESPN headshot. So that way we get the player image and their Savant ID, so that way when we join the data set, we have that player headshot. Okay, next we will do let's get the teams in there. So I'll just, again, I'm shortening it TMS. You can, again, call it whatever you want. MLB plot R. We'll load in those MLB teams. And then we'll select certain columns. So let's say team name equals the team abbreviation. And then we obviously want some of their colors. And the reason why I'm doing that is so that when we plot the bar plot, it gives us those colors that are represented with that player's team. And so say dplyr mutate as well, but let me run it because we'll have to make some adjustments. But let me run it and kind of show you what it looks like. So it's got the team name, their location, their mascot, their abbreviation, their ID number, and then all these different logos as well as color, what division they're in, and then the league logo, so American League, National League, or the MLB logo for each one. So we don't need team logos, we just need player logos, so we know essentially what team they are on. But we need to match on it. So some of these team abbreviations won't match the Fangraphs abbreviation, so we will make sure to adjust for that. So how do we do that? Simple. We'll just add in a mutate and say team name. And we can use case when from the dplyr package, and we'll say team name equals AZ. Just change it to ARI. So that way when we join the data sets together, there will be consistency between the two, so that way we can join it together. Because right now it's just saying like team name is, it's the Arizona Diamondbacks. Now there's easier ways of doing it. If you can get the team IDs from MLB to match with the team names, but again, they're still matching. There's another layer, so I figured this is a pretty straightforward way of adjusting for it. So you have San Francisco, San Francisco, Kansas City, change to KCR, and then the cool part is there's a part where it says true. Basically, if it doesn't match any of those above, we'll take just the team name and leave it as is. So we'll run this. I put an S instead of a 2 for team color 2. So you get each of the team names plus NLAL, MLB. If you want to keep it, great. If not, don't worry about it. You can leave it in there. It's not going to affect anything. And then you get their first 2 team colors as well, useful for plotting. But we also want the Fangraphs data frame where we can get Fangraphs data. So baseball R, Fangraphs bat leaders, and we'll say start season equals 2024, end season equals 2024, though I think, yes. So based on this code, it appears that you'll need to have these in quotes. So just say start season equals 2024, end season equals 2024. And so we'll run that. Now, I don't know if it'll have every player. I believe it should. It looks like it does. But you get a plethora of stats. And we're only concerned about war. But we can also add in other metrics too. And I might do that for certain things like WRC Plus, maybe, and then I'm not sure if they, or I think they do, they have exit velocity data now. That's not it. But yeah, like there's a plethora of columns that you can choose from. It's got, oh, okay, so right here, it's got barrel percentage, max EV, hard hit percentage. So maybe we can add those in there. And that's totally fine. So we will call this let's just call this war bat. So that way we filter down that original data set to a certain amount of columns. So that way we can join the player headshots and join by the teams to get the colors. And it allows us to kind of display that information in a very presentable, readable format. And I should say, if anybody has questions, leave a comment in the chat, please. So that way I have an idea of, if you have questions regarding this stuff. Anyways, so we'll go a little bit ahead. And say Warbat. So let's go Warbat. And let's say we're going to go with the original data set and just kind of take some of the columns. So the sum of the columns in there, Savant ID, we'll rename it in the select statement. So we'll say Savant ID equals X MLB AMID, player equals player name, and then we can do team name, and then all those components. So batting, base running, fielding, positional, league, which equals W league, and then replacement, and then runs above replacement, and then war. So war, let me pull up on Fangraphs. Again, support them if you can. War on Fangraphs gives you batting runs, base running runs, fielding runs, positional runs, league adjustment, and then replacement runs divided by runs per win. And so when you take all those components together, it then allows you to create war. So we'll take all those components and then be able to visualize it. So we'll exit out of that. So we're only taking that, and then the runs above replacement, again, that's just the total runs, which you'll see all of these factors are in runs, while you then convert runs to wins using that converter, and it'll get your wins above replacement. So now let's go to the next line, and let's add a mutate call, and just make sure it's a fielding, if else is an A, fielding, a little bit ahead of myself, then 0, otherwise fielding. So that way, like, an example would be like Shohei Ohtani, right? He's only played DH this year, so it's not going to appear any information, so we'll just leave it at 0. And then if you want, you can calculate like similar war by taking runs above replacement and summing all these together, but it does add up. But now we're going to then use a call that I'm still used to, but I know there's quicker ways of doing this, which is mutate, at, and then the variables. We want to round all of these components of war into one decimal place. So all of those components, and then we'll use the tilde sign. So that just basically means, hey, we're going to basically round each of these columns. So the tilde sign is just basically saying we're going to round every one of these columns that we mentioned in our variable. And then period, which is, again, refers to all of the columns, and then 1. So round everyone to the first one. Then we'll join our data sets together, which is then, again, period means the data set we currently have. HS, short for headshots, and we'll say by Savant ID. So that way we get the player headshots, and then we can left join period, and then teams by team name. So that way we get the teams in their colors as well as the player. So now we should be able to run this. Should be able to work fine. And so we have some different things. Oh, okay. I don't think. Okay, so with the headshots, I forgot to run that, so there's more columns than expected. It's fine. We'll still rerun all of this briefly. Then war back. So now we get the data set for everyone. Now, some might not appear, so right now, like Isak Paredes may not have team colors because there's not a team listed. Now that's something we might have to go one by one, and we can solve for that. But for now, as a basic Shiny app, I'll be sure to post the code as well for this in there so you can be able to see it. But we can also see some missing headshots. So what's going on there? It could very well be ESPN does not have the headshots of rookies. And it doesn't look like they do. So Jackson Merrill does not have a headshot. And that's fine. So, now that we're looking at it, now that we have all the data that we need, we can start to build out our Shiny app. So that's the essential basic part of the Shiny app. So we'll change this title and we'll say Batter War comparison or component comparison. So we're comparing all the components of war for a batter. So now that we go into that, we have our fluid page, which again is just setting up the raw page. Now we'll have the title panel, which again is just simple, a very simple title panel. Now we'll do our fluid row, which a fluid row consists of, I guess, 12 units. And so every row is 12 units long, so you got to make sure to split it up where it's, every 12 units. And so what I mean by that is, so we'll create a column, we'll make it, width 4. And this is where we can add in select inputs, where we can say select input, player 1, select player, choices. We'll keep the choices simple for now, so we'll just leave it as like Aaron Judge. But we will add more choices, and I'll show you how to do that dynamically in a bit. But just for a working version, I'll show you how to do this. So player 2, select player. And our choices, again, this time it's Shohei Ohtani. And then selected equals no. So that way we get that data set. Now we're going to add another column so we can display the plots. So just keep it very simple, call it plot output. We'll say player 1 plot. And do the same thing. Plot output player 2 plot. And so we have both of those. And so that's, again, this is the UI side, so we're not doing any filtering of data, but it's basically saying we're going to show 2 plots comparing WAR, and how you select those 2 players is from the select input of those 2 players that we have in there already. So now we can go down to the server side, and we can create, we'll create what's called reactive data frames. And essentially what reactive data frames do is allow you, so that way when you build the Shiny app and deploy it and let other people use it, when they keep selecting a new player, the data will filter down to that specific player, rather than, you know, if it was Aaron Judge, you'd filter it down to Aaron Judge, but then let's say you picked another player like Francisco Lindor, it would still be Aaron Judge because you don't have that reactive environment. So we'll just call this player DF1. I know the naming conventions aren't great, but bear with me, it's pretty simple. So player DF1, take your data frame, which we'll just call it DF, Warbat. We'll say dplyr filter player equals input $player1. And what input $player1 means is we are referring to player 1 of that select input. This is the input ID that we created. And so we're saying, hey, we want to take the input of player 1 of that ID. So input $player ID. Or player 1, sorry. And then we can use in tidyr, which is a part of tidyverse, pivot longer. And so what essentially we'll do is take these numbers and then create a metric out of it, so that way we can show it on the plot. So we'll say pivot longer, combine, batting, you know, all the components to WAR, batting, base running, fielding, positional, league, and replacement. So we're taking all of these columns and basically creating a new column name where the names go to metric. And so those values should stay the same, but it'll transition into a metric. And so what I can do here is within this input, you know, instead of saying Aaron Judge, let's do, again, Francisco Lindor. I can run that, and it'll show you his ID is player, team, runs above replacement, it's WAR, ESPN headshot, team colors, but then it gives you the metrics that you want to see and then the value of each of those. And so that's easier to make it for plotting purposes. So now that we have that, we also want to make things consistent. So when you're plotting, comparing 2 players, you don't want, you know, maybe the batting part to be the last column. You don't want the base running part to be the second column, you know, so on and so forth. You want it to be consistent. So we'll just say df $metric factor. So we'll just convert these columns to factor. we'll say factor df metric. So basically this is referring to the data frame that we just created, which let me fix this back from Francisco Lindor to input player 1. Factor df metric, and then the levels are batting, base running, fielding, positional, basically to mimic that tidy R pivot longer. And so that way it's in a order, so that way when you're doing these comparison plots, none of the columns kind of shift around. It remains the same. And so, now that we have that first player data frame as a reactive, we now will have the second player data frame. So this time let's say player df2, then change player 1 to player 2. And then you have your data frame. Again, same thing. But this time it's taking the second player that you input. So now we're in the process of creating the plot. And so we'll get that player headshot, we'll create the plot, and then combine the two, and then be able to create a way to basically get the data of two players. So we'll call this, so whenever you have like a plot output or a data table output, when you reference it on the server side, you'll need to start with output and then the $sign. And then similar to like input where it's $ID, we'll say output $ID. In this case, it's the one that we created, which is player 1 plot. We'll render a plot. And so we'll go parentheses squiggly bracket. Again, the squiggly bracket with parentheses is just to make it dynamic, to allow the the reactivity of selecting different players, so that way when you do create a plot, it's not stuck to just one player. And so the first thing we'll do is we'll create a logo, or I guess read an image. So logo, we'll use the magic package and we'll say image read, and then player df1, that reactive data frame that we created here. But whenever you deal with reactive data frames, you'll need parentheses on the outside. So player df1 parentheses, again, it's to signify, hey, when we're selecting Aaron Judge to Juan Soto to Manny Machado to so on and so forth, it allows to basically recreate that data frame and that plot. So we'll say player df1 ESPN headshot, since that's the name of the column of their headshot in the first row. So that'll get the player logo. And then what we'll do next, we'll wrap it in a plot. So ggplot player df1, again, that's the reactiveness of the data frame, and then we'll map our aesthetic. So AES, X is our metric, Y is our value, and then our fill is that dynamic team color that we added to the data set. Then we'll say geom bar stat equals identity, so that way the stats are mapped to basically what it is. So it's not recalculating anything. It's just remaining the same from what the data set has. So in this case, Lindor, his stat for batting is 28.7. So it will show as 28.7. Then we'll do a geom label. And we'll say AES again, label equals, and we'll do a paste. And so basically we'll take that value, because we know it's in runs, but maybe the users of the app may not know it's in runs. We'll just paste, say, hey, Francisco Lindor was worth 28 or is currently worth 28.7 batting runs. And then on the outside, we'll do some vertical adjustments so that way, and then leave the background fill to be white. So basically, it allows us to adjust the label up or down so that way it's not like in the middle of the bar chart or in the middle of each bar when you're plotting it. And then we'll do a scale fill manual because again, we're taking the team color from the team, and we'll say values equals player df1 $sign team color. And that's taking that team color. So it's taking this color here for each data frame and then being able to put it on the bar plot. And then we'll say our Y limits. So to make it dynamic for the player comparison tool, this is another reason why we'll use two separate data frames for the reactiveness, is we can create dynamic limits so that way the plots look the same, because we can obviously make it misleading if we set a limit for 20 on one plot and then 60 for another plot, and the players, let's say the player's batting runs were 20, but the other player's batting runs were 60, but his max limit was 60, the other player's max limit was 20, then it looks like they're essentially the same player by how the graph visually looks. So how do we combat that? We call ylim, which is the Y limits, and we'll say the minimum of combined player df1 value, and then comma, the second data frame, so player df2, again, don't forget the parentheses, value. Okay, now we have the min of that. Now we'll do the same thing, but this time of the max. We'll take the max player data frame 1 value, and then same thing for player df2 value. So that way the axes are scaled to be the same. And then we can add our labels. So labels, caption, we'll say data, fan graphs, and then figure is my figure. So I'll just leave my handle there. You can put whatever you want if you're following along. Nice. And so we'll add that caption in there. And then we can add a theme. So I like using Theme Classic. Feel free to look up different themes. But yeah, I enjoy Theme Classic. And then we'll add another theme, which is just saying we'll get rid of, say, axis title X. We'll leave that as an element blank with parentheses. So basically we're taking out the axis title, and then we'll say legend position. So we don't want a legend. So if we don't want it, we can just say none. And then if you want to adjust the plot title or subtitle, you can, but we're not doing a title in this case. So this gets us the plot, but of course we want to add in the player logo. And the simplest way of doing that is this. So now we have our plot called plot 1. We have our logo. just simply call ggplot, and then draw a plot. We'll take our plot 1, and we'll say x equals 0, y equals 0.15, and then the width, it's that full width, and then we'll say the height, let's make it the full height as well. And then, and this is part of cowplot's package, and I forgot to mention, we'll leave this up at the top, but you can install these packages by just saying install that package, and then in quotes, package name, whatever it may be. So like cowplot, magic, so on and so forth. So you just uncomment this line and then change package name to these plots if you don't have them. Now, most modern R code will have a drop down here or some like a little message here at the top saying, all these packages are not found. Would you like to install them? Typically, you'd say yes. So also look out for that. All right. So now that we're adding that, we'll draw the image. And we'll say our logo is the image. And we'll say x equals 0.4. So we'll put it, a little bit to the middle, but not quite to the middle. And y, 0.5. And then we'll set the width and the height to be 0.25. And we can mess around with this. It's what I typically do is this is more like a guess and check for me. And just say, okay, his player image is there. We'll put it, we'll adjust it. So now we have the player 1 plot. I'll just copy this and essentially do the same thing. So boom. Player 2 plot. Player 2 DF. No, we'll say player DF2 because again we're pulling from the second data frame. And same goes for team color. But the Y limb can remain the same. I'll just copy it over. So now that we have all of that, we can run the Shiny app. So we'll save it. Run the app. Should go through this for the first time. Should pull up a screen like this. And it looks like we're getting an error. So it says operator invalid for atomic vectors. That's fine. And now I just got to find the error. And that will take a minute or two. We have that. Have that. Input player 2, input DF metric. So that typically means the $sign is not available in a certain spot. Or I miscalled the $sign somewhere. Just need to figure out where. And so you can debug with me. I see. So I think I figured it out. So I don't have parentheses here. So I need to add parentheses there. I think that might be the only spot where I didn't add it. It's the player DF1 value. So I do apologize for that. If you're following along. Now you run it. It's still giving me that error. Okay, so it's magic image read. Huh. Let me see. So we have player DF1 value, player DF2, player, yep. I might have misput parentheses there. Oh, there's a lot of parentheses, I can tell you that much. Okay, so we'll get rid of the parentheses there. Again, apologize for messing that part up. And we still get an error. Let me try typing it out off the screen and seeing if maybe I mess something up there. Okay. So there might have been a slight change, but let's see. I feel like that's where it's at because most of the parentheses are there. I could be wrong. I am wrong. Okay. Let's see, where else am I missing at? So player df1, player df2, player plot 1, player df1. Let me type on this side. Because I know I'm getting the error at magic image read. And so we'll say dplayer filter input player 2, player 1. That matches up. Is there a... Copy this. Maybe I spelled something wrong. Space that out a little bit more. We'll try giving her a run. I'll put player 1 plot, player 2 plot. Yeah, those match up. Player underscore 1 underscore plot. I won't run it. Still giving me an error. Player 1 plot. Where am I missing here? So player 1 plot, player 2 plot. Still giving me an error. Now if I open it, yeah. So it looks like there's an error going on here, and that's fine. So it says operator invalid for atomic vectors, which essentially means the $sign not available somewhere. So we have the column value. Player df1, team color. We do have team color. We do have ESPN headshot. Because all of these reactivity metrics will say. Okay. Let me try this instead. There's that. We'll set the height to be 1, just to be safe. Oh shoot, that was player 2 plot. Or player 1 plot, wasn't it? Yeah. Alright. Boom. And then 1. And then, let's try this. Don't need that extra code. Okay, so let me make this and that in there. And see if that works now. Invalid operator for atomic vectors. Huh. We got a stumper on our hands. So this is part of the fluid page. Player 1 plot. Input player 2, input player 1. That makes sense. Player DF1, the one that we created here. Player DF2, the one that we created here. That makes sense. Now we have player DF2 team color. We have player DF1 value, player DF2 value. And then the max of both of those with the Y lim. And then same here. This is a stumper. Chat. I correct myself. Anyways, so we're a little bit stuck. Let me try doing this. So I'm gonna restart Art. Load all these packages. And we're just gonna rerun it. See what happens. Okay. So still getting there. Reactive. Plot 1. Theme. Okay. Draw a plot. Plot 1. Now what if I just do plot 1, plot 2? Great. Well, look, everything is crashing. Let's try running it. Still getting the error. Okay, so we are at a stumper. I still don't know what it could be. I'm going to take out both of these. And maybe it'll work. Still no. So we know it's not those. The DF2. Yeah, this is a thought. This is a process we gotta go through. So I think it's good, right? This is good. You can kind of see like maybe errors do come up on your end. Okay. So let's take this out. Alright. So we'll take out the logo. And see if the logo is giving us the error. I want to save it. I just got doxed. Okay, so now we're getting a different error at least. Did I change the name? So Warbat. Player. There's the player name. Aaron Judge. Shohei Ohtani. Interesting. Let's restart R. Let's get the images back. And let's try the... Let's just get rid of the paste. Maybe that has something to do with it. I could be wrong. But yep, still an error. Unfortunately. This was... I'm going to remove all of this now to debug. Who knows, maybe this could work. Still no. I'm not sure where the problem is coming from. So player 2 plot, player 1 plot. We basically just took out just about everything. It says a data frame. It's not a data frame. It is though. Unless, do I need to like put df at the end? Right, one more time. Okay, so maybe that's what it was the whole time. I forgot to add df. That's crazy. If that's the case. I guess you wanted it to return something at the same time. So who knows? That could be it. Let's hope that that's the case. I know I've been on here longer than I anticipated. Trying to solve a pesky little error. Okay, so now that we're back at it, here we go. Checking. Well, we at least have Aaron Judge appearing. So here's Aaron Judge. Here's his runs. His batting value is through the roof. It's pretty high. Then Ohtani is not found. Oh, I see. So I messed up the numbering. Wow, who would have thought? Nothing's appearing. But hey, we're back on track. And there you go. So now you have both of these players looking at their plots. Pretty neat, huh? Now let's, since it's hard to see the height, let's adjust the height. Maybe to like 0.8. And then maybe we'll say like the image height is 0.5. Run it again. And look at that. A little bit cleaner. But you have Ohtani and Judge comparing their WAR. That's pretty neat. So obviously Judge has quite a bit of batting runs. Quite a bit. Replacement runs roughly the same. But positional, he only gets docked 3.3 runs. Where Shohei, being a DH only, gets docked negative 15.8 runs. And then Ohtani gets slightly more runs because he's in the National League versus Judge in the American League. And then obviously Ohtani has much more value in base running runs than Aaron Judge. Now the reason why base running is 3 columns because we did not put it in here, so we can add that in there. Actually, let's take this code and actually go back to the original code. I don't know why it's not letting me save it, but that's not a big deal. So we can have batting, base running, and then we get all the data. So pretty neat, right? But obviously you want to see more players. What's the easiest way to do that? Here's the easiest way. We could say choices equals unique. I should just say, you don't necessarily need to say unique. Warbat, $sign, player, And then same for this side. Player. And then if you want it sorted A to Z, you can sort it. And then this is where we can go into selected and say, Aaron, you know, we'll select 2 different players. So Francisco Lindor. And then Bobby Witt Jr. That's right. And does not let me save right now, apparently. So, the bar graphs are not appearing, but hey, it's interesting to see it that way. So Lindor has colors. So does Witt. So why are the colors not appearing? Team color. Player DF1, team color. They're not outside of the range, but in essence, it does give you a little bit of an error. So, comment this out. Don't comment that part out. It'll save time for running the Shiny app. Now, it allows us to see different players. So now, for some reason, it doesn't pop up. Now, I wonder if the colors are the same. But anyways, so we can see here, like, comparison between Fernando Tatis, Bobby Witt. Bobby Miller. So some of these guys obviously don't have data or are missing data. So that's something we need to figure out. Because there's no ESPN headshot or a team color. Now we look at teams, we see, so that's another thing we can add is team name equals HW or CWS, change it to CHW. So, I don't know why it's not letting me save it. Unfortunate, but it's interesting. Now, if I pick another player, yeah, that is interesting. It appears, but we can make the height smaller to fit this page. So now that we know that, we can adjust the height, and instead of 0.5, let's do 0.35 for both of them. So we'll rerun it. Looks a little bit smaller. Yeah. It's interesting. So Dylan Carlson with the Rays, Bobby Witt. Brandon Drury. That's very interesting. So yeah, so this is a pretty simple way of creating a war component. Now you want to obviously add in maybe a table or maybe an alert or something to say like, hey, here's his war. Or we can do it this way. Let's add in a table. We'll just call this player 1 table. And then player 2 table. So we get both these player tables. And we can filter down the data set. So we can just say, all right, let me put it behind the player 1 plot. So instead of maybe output player 1 table, render table, we can say, we'll say df, df, we'll take the original data set of bat, so let's bring you back. And we'll say dplyr filter player name, since we didn't change it in the new column, equals input $player 1, and then we can just do dplyr select the player equals player name, and war, and then, or actually, let's do some offensive stats like WRC plus, and then war, just as a proof of concept. And so we'll do the same thing. Let me add in df just to be safe. But do the same thing for player 2. And it should show a table. And then let's run it. Might take a second or two to load. And it looks like we're getting errors for the table. So when we go back into the original data set, we have the column name player name. That's pulling from that. $14.31 or 1, not size 0. Okay, so what we can do here then, make sure there's no questions. Okay, no questions so far. So now we can take this data. Looks like we're creating a data set. So we're filtering by player name. I see. The reason why is I forgot the underscore. So it should be player underscore 1 and player underscore 2. Now we can run it. That's right. It's not saving on my end. This will be the last bit of it. no data's appearing either for Garrett Mitchell. Oh, I see. The other side of it is I should have changed the name of the column. Who would have thought? So, I forgot to change the name of the column, but now we have their WRC Plus and their WAR. It's rounded, but you can see the differences in it. Don't know why it's not showing up for that specific case, but let's compare Aaron Judge to Bodywood Jr. Oh, works like a charm. Then you have Aaron Judge, Bodywood Jr. and their WRC Plus and their WAR. So pretty close, but I mean, again, pretty interesting to see how different they are in fielding, base running, positional adjustments, batting runs, so on and so forth. So this is a pretty neat and simple way to kind of visualize two different players, but not sure. Now, is this for all Mets players? So, if we do the Entos. Oh, yeah. It's like there's errors there. But, at the end of the day, not a big deal. What we can do is make some adjustments there, but I'll leave it off at there. Thanks everyone for watching. Really hope you enjoyed kind of this walkthrough. I know we had a little bit of hiccups, but I kind of showed you how to run through it, so we were able to kind of work through it that way. But thank you so much for watching. If you thought this work was beneficial and you enjoyed this, and want to support me if you can, consider buying me a coffee. Again, it's listed right there at the bottom of the screen. Any donation is appreciated. Again, greatly appreciated, one. And then two, on the other side, it helps me know that, hey, I like this content. I want to see more of this specific thing or something like this. Leave a comment, say, hey, your War Comparison Shiny App video was great. Here's a coffee, as they say. So thank you so much for anyone that donates. Again, not necessary if you don't, feel like you want to donate, or if you do, but you don't, just like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'm pretty close to 1,000 subscribers. Anything that gets me there would be greatly appreciated. We go a long way. But thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.